You're always there when they need you or when they say that they want something done or when they have an order to give you or they just like that you're so, like, always shiny and bright on the surface. Are those the kind of people you really wanna keep around in your life indefinitely? Is this the energy that you want to keep attracting to you? These more superficial, surface level relationships that may feel a little bit pleasant in the moment, but at the same time, there's something within you that feels anxious because you feel this compulsive desire, this compulsive need to always be on, to always be performing a certain role and to a certain level and having a certain reaction and response that's almost like a script. Like you've scripted yourself into a particular role or identity for other people's benefit more so than your own. Now, there is something that you get out of that that we need to be aware of and be honest with ourselves about. We do get sort of this payoff of feeling that, okay, things are smooth and comfortable on the surface. I'm not going to attract conflict or tension if I'm always acting bright and shiny and yes, and I'm always saying yes to everything everyone asks, or I'm always volunteering my time or just acting very pleasant all the time compulsively, right? Just so things feel smooth and easy in those daily interactions. And I understand the temptation to present like that, especially if you have certain woundings, like from childhood, like I had, where it felt very unsafe in my body and my nervous system to ever disagree with my father. I could not disagree with my father. I always had to agree with him because he always had to be right. And I always had to do what I could to please him every single day. And that included he would make sure that I did well in school and that I was performing close to perfect or at least good enough under his standards, what he expected, what he had set in his mind of how his child should be and be performing in school and in extracurriculars and sports. I actually ended up playing a sport that I didn't want to for somewhere between 5 to 7 extra years beyond my enthusiasm as a little kid because it was like, oh, things were extra exciting when you were like 5 and 6 and whatever. Like you wanted to try all sorts of things. But then as I got a little older, like 11, 12, into my early teen years, I felt like I had to keep playing that sport for him, and it felt exhausting. It just felt like, here I am, always just trying to please my dad, and I felt like I was trapped and I couldn't get out of it, and wasn't until I was 17 that I was finally able to stop playing that sport, which was a long time to just play a sport that I didn't really wanna play solely to please my dad, and he would also get angry. He was very competitive. He would get angry and just be very grumpy and make me feel ashamed if I didn't perform to my highest ability in that particular sport on that particular day. He would set the energy and tone of disappointment for me to really feel ashamed that I wasn't performing just right, just how he expected me to. So this is typical narcissism, and it's very much like the child who didn't feel safe being authentic and saying, just telling their dad, I don't want to play this sport anymore. Actually, I'm interested in this other thing and pursue that other thing that you're interested in. But I felt like I couldn't, and I had to hide those other qualities to a degree. Like I could show them a little bit, especially around my mom. She was more supportive. So long as it was being still seen as a positive light, if I was like writing or I wrote poetry and was musical in some ways, and he would tolerate it, but he wasn't excited in the same way as, like, me doing these other like, this particular sport that he really liked and wanted me to keep doing. Yeah, so it does get pretty exhausting to continue to always be feeling like I have to be someone I'm not. I have to perform in a certain role for other people just so I can have approval, just so I can be liked enough. But the second you step out of that box, The second you have a bad day or you're not your usual performative identity that they expect of you, or you just don't live up to whatever their ideal is for that moment, you're just stuck in a shame box usually if especially in the case of a narcissistic parent or a narcissistic family member or a narcissistic boss. That this also very much applies to the workplace. If you have a narcissistic boss, someone in an authority role, someone who is putting out an energy for you to feel ashamed, showing that they're disappointed in you, showing that punishing you in some way, whether very directly and overtly or more indirectly, but the result would be this chronic shame every time you let down someone else. And this is very much how that codependent pattern of compulsive people pleasing, of compulsively overextending, overgiving, always trying to be the nice girl or the nice guy just gets really set and imprinted in our identity at a young age and becomes what we feel like we have to do in our adult life in order to survive, in order to feel safe enough. And it can feel, especially at first, to break out of this, it can feel very uncomfortable to begin to shed that old identity that felt like, oh, this is the only way that I can survive. This is the only way that I can make a living is by continuing to be this people pleaser. This is how that identity really got imprinted in a very at a very young age in me. And I found myself because I learned very early on, like to move my energy up from my lower three chakras up to my third eye chakra of awareness. So I could always be aware and hyper vigilant of what was happening in my environment around me and who I was interacting with and how to be for them. How to, again, I think I've mentioned this before, that chameleon metaphor, but how to present for them in order to have them like me, have them approve of me, have them, especially if they're in any kind of authority role, give me good favor, right? Or just offer me some kind of positive favor for being so nice, right? Or giving me a certain level of work or some kind of felt sense of job security if I kept performing this role. So I was very much attracted earlier on in life to social work type of jobs, jobs where I was being put in a role to perform and really be there for people, which it's a beautiful thing. Like, I'm not putting down social work at all. If you're a social worker, like, I just want to high five you right now because I know that that's a challenging job. I worked in jobs that were adjacent to social work, where it was really important that you had a very compassionate personality, compulsively compassionate personality, were very empathetic, very much had endless patience to listen to anyone's challenges, but could also be very focused on that outcome and output and meet certain quotas that were expected in that particular institution or environment that you were working in this supportive role for. And again, I am saying this is a beautiful line of work and job, but I would say if you are going to go into that type of work or continue in that type of work, to do that more consciously and be honest with yourself. If I'm doing this because if this is a job I've been called to because of a certain trauma pattern history, right, in you, from having had to survive and stay safe as a child and into your early teen and adult years, if this was a pattern that I adopted from my trauma, from my upbringing, or if this is something I just genuinely, this is my true, authentic passion. This is the job I really want to do for the rest of my life because I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And I truly have the heart and the passion and I love it. So for me, I didn't really have a deep, authentic passion for that. I didn't really want to be doing that. In fact, I felt rather forced, in spite of seeing that it was like, in a way, right livelihood, a good way of working in the world because I was providing some very positive value and it always felt good when people would say, "Thank you so much. You've helped me out so much." It always felt like really beautiful to have those moments. However, for me personally, I was very much attracted to those types of jobs, mainly because I had this particular trauma pattern and I had moved so much energy, my lower three chakras up to my third eye, that awareness. And I had this ability, this special, extra attuned ability to really tune into my environment, to be aware of what others were thinking and feeling, to basically be on for other people all the time. I felt like the only real intrinsic gift I had was to just set myself aside what I really wanted and needed and push that away and just be so there for other people and listening and caring. And so they would feel held in my presence and compassionately loved or cared for. And some people still like it was even that amount of just positive attention and listening and helping wasn't enough. So, because you have every kind of person that would need support at different times and some very angry and frustrated people. And it's actually quite a lot to be there in those moments with someone like that. But for me, ultimately, and for my authenticity, for tuning in to my authenticity and healing sort of these lower chakra energies, it was very much a dysfunctional thing that held me back from really being honest with myself in those days and realizing, wow, this is just too much. This isn't for me. This is actually, it made a lot of challenges within my nervous system. It actually amplified them a bit. It made me feel, I started to feel like more and more trapped in that type of work. I started to feel like even as I kept giving and being present for others, it wasn't enough. And I just knew I didn't really want to be doing this. So eventually I did leave, but it certainly took more time than it would have needed to if I had been more willing to be honest with myself and more willing to move more to an authentic place within myself and open to the possibility of changing my identity and realizing I have other gifts that I could be doing, other possible good work in the world that I could offer, that I had more value beyond just my ability to simply to hold presence. And now I have healthier boundaries and I'm able to say no instead of compulsively say yes to things that I really don't want to do just to be liked, just to keep having what I thought at the time was a good, stable job. But actually, I was getting paid very low, which is quite typical in social work, caregiving type roles. Like some of those jobs only offer minimum wage or maybe just a little beyond minimum wage, unless you're in an administrative role. But if you're on the ground working, usually with people, you're not making a lot. So that can really drain you of your energy. And there's usually very heavy expectations to even work beyond your hours or to travel or just a lot of paperwork and a lot of reporting. So it's a lot, but it's important to realize that you have a choice. And I had a choice that I just didn't realize at the time, but I finally did. I finally chose to let go of work that I didn't feel called to anymore. Realize that you have the power to choose a new you and a new reality. Thank you for listening.